This month on Focus Black Oklahoma, join us as we discuss the effects of book bans on Oklahoma libraries in both urban and rural areas.
Learn about Free Mom Hugs, the Oklahoma-born movement created to support the 2S LGBTQIA+ community.
Hear the latest update on our previous coverage of the ongoing battle over the fate of the prairie chicken.
Explore Greenwood's past and present through World Stage Theater's upcoming production, Reflections, written by 2 Tulsa playwrights.
And listen to Sandra Slade's home renovation story and decide if it's a flip or a flop. All this and more on Focus Black Oklahoma.
Focus Black Oklahoma is sponsored by Phillips Seminary's exhibition of Indigenous Voices, Sacred Storytelling and Resistance, featuring the art of Johnny Daikon, opening November 6 on its Tulsa campus. WhereFaithLeads.com.
This is Focus Black Oklahoma. I'm Jacob Littlebear.
And I'm Kuma Roberts.
In 2022, the Oklahoma State Legislature joined the wave of book bannings across the United States by requiring school libraries to reflect community standards. But who decides what those community standards are? Charlie Chadwick asked the librarians themselves.
In celebration of Banned Books Week, October 1st through 7th, I spoke with 2 librarians to discuss book challenges, bans, and censorship with a spotlight on the differences and similarities between rural and metro libraries in Oklahoma. PEN America, a nonprofit organization that works to keep reading materials in schools, defines a book ban as, quote, any action taken against a book based on its content and as a result of parent or community challenges, administrative decisions, or in response to direct or threatened action by lawmakers or other government officials that leads to a previously accessible book being either completely removed from availability to students or where access to a book is restricted or diminished, end quote. Michelle Simmons, library director of the Nancy and Joe McDonald Rainbow Library at the Oklahomans for Equality Center in Tulsa, speaks on inclusion at the private library she serves.
We do have books that are geared towards younger children, picture books, early readers that talk a lot more about acceptance, that people are different and that maybe you're different and you are welcome and loved and a part of your community no matter what you look like or feel like. There are some that do address more gender questions, but primarily it's targeted towards the we accept everyone and love everyone.
Heather Hutto, executive director at Bristow Public Library, has been serving rural communities for about 10 years. With this experience, she offers a breakdown of a librarian's role.
So librarians definitely aren't waking up every morning going, wow, what rules and policies am I going to make up and enforce today, right? There's levels, just like any other profession. There are levels of accreditation. There's levels of competency standards. All libraries, whether or not the librarians serving at those libraries have a master's degree in library science, all libraries are supposed to operate to the best of their ability according to the core competencies of librarianship. And those values, promoting democracy, promoting intellectual freedom, promoting free expression, and probably the number one thing that librarians promote, access to information. Those are the guiding principles that drive everything that we do.
PEN America found 3,362 instances of book bans in U.S. public school classrooms and libraries from July 1st, 2022 to June 20th, 2023, a 33% increase from the previous school year. Most of these challenges were to books written by or about a person of color, a member of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, and books authored by women. Hutto explains the process of a book challenge an attempt to remove or restrict materials at Bristow Public Library.
The reconsideration form is a tool that many libraries across the United States use when a book is challenged. Bristow Public Library has such a form. Any patron that has a concern with any work, that being a book, a graphic novel, sheet music, anything that you might find in libraries these days, if a patron has an issue with it, then they can bring that to our attention by filling out a reconsideration form. The form itself varies from library to library. Libraries, just like libraries create their own policies, they also create their own reconsideration forms. And if we actually receive a reconsideration form, the first step as executive director is to thank the patron and let them know that we will be considering their opinion, because the First Amendment does protect their right to dissent. After that, of course, myself and my staff review the reconsideration form, and then typically these forms go to a board. Now, Bristow is unique in that it has a governing board. Most public libraries these days have an advisory board. But despite the governance of the board itself, the forms are basically vetted by the board, and the board, after much discussion, which is open to public opinion, makes a decision whether to keep the book on the shelf or to perhaps change its classification, move it somewhere else in the library, or to do nothing.
Hutto explains what happens to books or materials while they are being challenged. Here's how it works at her library.
They are not removed from the library. However, the access is kind of temporarily suspended if that is the only copy of the work that we have. So, every time a book is challenged, if that's the only copy of the book in the library, it does, create a restriction of access, which is something that libraries aren't about.
The Rainbow Library, a private library located in downtown Tulsa, does not accept challenges to their collection. Simmons explains.
This is a home for any queer book, whether it's written by a queer person or about any of the 2S LGBTQIA+ identities or struggles to live.
A report by the American Library Association's Office for Intellectual Freedom found that between January 1st, 2023 and August 31st, 2023, 49% of documented challenges were to books in public libraries, up from 16% in 2022. Simmons addresses these realities.
They've been able to move from just curricula to public libraries because they've seen enough success that they feel like they can move that into the public sector. Kids should have access to materials. Adults obviously should be able to make their own decisions about what they want to read. It may be optional, but who are we to say what is and is not optional for somebody? What you read is your own private business, but what access you have to books is not to be gate-kept.
This study has also found that censorship occurred in 220 school districts and 208 public libraries. Here's Hutto again.
I wouldn't walk into a surgeon's room and start telling them how to operate. And so I definitely don't feel like lawmakers really have much to stand on. They don't have any credibility when it comes to what actually takes place in the classroom or in the library.
Oklahoma House Bill 3092 mandates that school libraries are to reflect community standards and contain, quote, age-appropriate end quote, materials. Hutto weighs in on how materials are deemed age appropriate.
I would not say that any library in particular establishes the age appropriateness of a work. Librarians are trained to read reviews, not just one, not just partisan reviews. Usually books that actually have reviews, because many of them don't. For works that do have reviews, we make all kinds of decisions. Is it a good fit for the community? Is it a good economic purchase? Because we are the stewards of taxpayer dollars. Does it fit in junior better than it fits in young adult? So to some extent, we have a say as to where we will put a work, but usually those items get placed depending on where the author and the publisher decide they should be placed.
Simmons speaks on age appropriateness guidelines not found in her private library.
We don't police the age that kids check out books, or if they check out something that's not in the young adult section. That's not for us as librarians to do.
Despite not being a school library, Bristow Public Library does mirror community standards. Hutto explains how.
One of my first lines of business when I became director was to do an audit of our collections and see where we were meeting the representation of our community and where we were lacking. Bristow in particular has a large Lebanese population. We also have a large Indigenous population, and both of those groups were not equitably represented in our collections. And so I've spent the last 2 years trying to make sure that representation was more equitable.
Hutto goes into detail about the differences in community standards between a rural library and a metro library.
The term in and of itself, community standards, kind of has a sense of bias attached to it, because you can't really have standards unless you also consider the education levels. And unfortunately, in most of America, rural communities have been left behind. They have lower levels of education attainment. Notwithstanding, libraries have to have books for everyone on the shelf. And it is harder if you are in a marginalized group or you feel that you are in a marginalized group. It's hard to be vocal if you feel like you're the only one who might identify with said marginalized group. So we have to ensure that there are works on our shelves, even for those people who are too afraid to speak up.
More importantly are the similarities between libraries, no matter their location. Hutto emphasizes that point.
All of us care about children. All of us care about our elders. All of us presumably appreciate, respect, and promote notions of democracy. And I think that's our common ground.
Simmons shares what community standards look like at the Rainbow Library and her take on the variance of community standards between a rural and metro area library.
We tend to think rural areas are only conservative, but the last I heard, gay kids aren't just born in metro areas. Community standards is such a single perspective look on what the world is. The community standards here are education, learning about yourself, learning how to have a productive and healthy life. And if you do have challenges or if you don't have support, you can absolutely find it in the library.
Just as there are similarities and differences in a library's location, the patrons themselves vary. Hutto elaborates on the need for library access in rural communities.
Across our state, there have been some education gaps. And unfortunately, these education gaps are usually in the areas of civics education and history education. And in my experience, after serving for about 10 years in rural communities tend to have lower levels of education attainment, especially pertaining to civics and history curriculum.
In May of 2023, an analysis of book challenges by the Washington Post found that 66% of over 1,000 challenges are connected to just 11 individuals. Hutto shares the importance of inclusion at her library.
After about 2 years of serving as director, we had a patron come in who identified as trans and wanted us to change the pronouns for them in our ILS, which is our integrated library system. And they shared with us later that they had been afraid of judgment before that moment. But they heard that we were inclusive, and they heard that we had works on the shelves that spoke to them and represented them. And so they felt empowered and they felt included, and now they come to the library.
While many schools, like Tulsa Public Schools, have banned Flamer by Mike Corrado and Genderqueer, a memoir by Maya Kobe, these titles and many others are available at the Rainbow Library at the Dennis R. Neal Equality Center in Tulsa. Library Director Michelle Simmons speaks on the need for this representation in literature.
Kids have they feel things very, very strongly. And that's what I got out of Flamer, right? This kid was being bullied and he felt very strongly about it. Needed to cope with it to be able to keep moving on. If you move past the quote-unquote problematic panel, there's a message there about consent, right? Consent for yourself, consent, to and from others.
No matter the location of the library, rural or metropolitan, books and information should be a common ground we protect.
Because all of us do belong, and we should all be able to find ourselves in the library.
For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Charlie Chadwick in Bristow.
Free Mom Hugs, a nationwide movement of love, visibility, and acceptance for the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, was born right here in Oklahoma. Love Revolution, the first Free Mom Hugs national conference, occurred in Oklahoma City in September. Shonda Little spoke with the organization's founder, Sara Cunningham, and national coordinator, Amber Jensen.
On Wednesday, October 11th, National Coming Out Day was celebrated globally as an annual event to encourage people to live openly with their loved ones as their authentic selves if they wish to do so, and doing so is safe. Inaugurated in 1988, co-founders Robert Eichberg and Jean O'Leary said, quote, "Homophobia thrives in an atmosphere of silence and ignorance, and that once people know that they have loved ones who are lesbian and gay, they are far less likely to maintain homophobic and oppressive views," end quote. In honor of National Coming Out Day, I sat down with leaders from this national movement that originated right here in Oklahoma.
Hi, my name is Sara Cunningham. I am a mother of 2 children, married. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the founder of Free Mom Hugs.
Hi, my name's Amber Jensen. I live in Woodward, Oklahoma, up in almost in the Panhandle, and I volunteer for Free Mom Hugs. I do the volunteer registry for national organization, and I'm here if you have any questions.
In day-to-day operations, Cunningham serves as the organization's director, and Jensen serves as a Free Mom Hugs state leader in Oklahoma and the national volunteer organizer. Both people came to this place in their lives from their own personal journeys. Cunningham's was that of a mother who had been raised to believe that homosexuality was a sin and found herself experiencing a range of emotions, many of which she now admits were damaging to her son Parker, as he struggled to come out as gay to her. Now 42, Jensen's story is that of a bisexual Oklahoma teen forced into conversion therapy by her evangelical biological father, and then the long path of healing that followed.
This organization began after an experience I had at a 2014 Oklahoma City Pride Festival with my youngest son, Parker, who is part of the community, identifies as gay. And he tried to come out to me his whole life. I manipulated the conversation. I thought it was a phase. I did not take the news very well when he actually met someone, when he turned 21. And I behaved badly. I didn't know where to look for resources. I'm a woman of faith, and I didn't understand what it meant to have a gay child, especially being conservative, raising my family in a conservative mainstream evangelical church who had just absorbed this idea that either something bad had to happen to Parker to make him gay, or maybe I failed as a mother or a woman of faith. And I just absorbed this idea that homosexuality was wrong. Until I got educated on things like the history of human sexuality and science and evidence. And it was a journey from the church to the Pride Parade without losing my faith or my son. But in 2014 was my first intentional interaction with the LGBTQIA plus community. And I met a beautiful spirit-filled community that I fell in love with. And in 2015, I made a homemade button that read the words "Free Mom Hugs." And with anyone who made eye contact with me, I offered them a hug or a high five, because not everybody's a hugger. And the first hug went to a beautiful young woman who said that it had been 4 years since she had a hug from her mother because she's a lesbian. And I heard stories like that all day. And from that experience, we started the nonprofit Free Mom Hugs. And it started just a few moms and dads and friends and allies in the city of Oklahoma City. And we just started helping out with bus passes, gas cards to, kids who were living out of their car, alienated from their homes, from their church families, and from many parts of society. So fast forward a few years, and I'm getting educated on laws that affect families like ours. And so I became accountable, and now we have Free Mom Hugs chapters in every state of moms and dads and friends and allies who show up for Pride festivals, second chance proms. We plan national events, and we've been an organization, a national nonprofit for 5 years now. And we just finished our very first Free Mom Hugs Love Revolution conference held in the heart of downtown Oklahoma City.
As Free Mom Hugs grew and flourished, Amber Jensen traveled with their husband Brian from their rural home in northwest Oklahoma to a Pride festival in Oklahoma City. By happenstance, they met Cunningham. As a bisexual, non-binary person who had survived conversion therapy, they were also supporting their trans and non-binary siblings. They thought of their own children and grandchildren. Volunteering for Free Mom Hugs simply made sense.
It was at the 2016 Pride, and my youngest sibling was with me, and it was my youngest sibling's birthday, June 25th. And we told Sarah, hey, this is Ash's birthday. And Ash came out as non-binary to us at that moment. It was beautiful. I was crying. Sarah was crying. Ash was crying with relief.
For Jensen, having a place their younger sibling and other children could find support to come out was invaluable, because their personal struggle with coming out had been an experience that left them feeling desperate.
I'm also a survivor of conversion therapy. I was sent to a camp when I was 12 years old, and it almost ended really catastrophically for me. I had to seek mental health treatment after that. I moved in with my mother, and she accepted me for who I was and who I am, and that's what saved me. But conversion therapy is something that I've lived through and don't want anyone else to have to live through.
With chapters in all 50 states and over 23,000 volunteers, Free Mom Hugs plans to continue to minister to people needing a safe space. Their work even caught the attention of Jamie Lee Curtis, who openly supports her own trans child. Curtis has bought the rights to Cunningham's book and was also instrumental in the first ever Free Mom Hugs convention.
I just want to give a shout out to Jamie Lee Curtis. If she hears this, she has been such a great support to us and to everything that we're trying to accomplish.
However, both agreed that more important than being well-known names helping expand their important mission, Cunningham and Jensen said the convention hosting speakers to discuss issues like intersectionality of race and the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, or the definitions of being a true ally, were critically important. Oklahoma Representative Marie Turner, the nation's first non-binary elected official, addressed these topics and more. Cunningham acknowledges that her organization is predominantly white, but says she wants to see more diversity within her ranks.
We need diversity in our own group. We're well aware of that. It's something that is at the forefront of what we do. We always want to be a platform, to be approachable and to be diverse, but there's a dynamic there we just can't seem to get across.
Cunningham was honest, expressing she does not have the solution, but she also says she's open to any suggestions and to tough conversations. She knows it is needed to help people, all people, have access to safe places to come out and the resources to thrive. Cunningham and Jensen both discussed new laws and potential laws that will affect how public schools treat 2S LGBTQIA+ children. Cunningham believes that supportive teachers who embraced her son's true sexual identity before Cunningham could likely saved his life.
Yes, I do believe that the allies that my gay son had in school kept him alive, or at least looking towards and telling him things are going to get better and being a safe place. I'm so thankful that those teachers were in place for my son. And without a doubt, they absolutely saved his life and protected him in a way that I wouldn't or couldn't.
Visit freemomhugs.org or their social media pages for more information or to get involved.
If you're a parent, whether your child is 7 or 77, believe them when they show you and tell you who they are. Allow for a safe space. Allow for the vocabulary.
For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Shonda Little in Cheyenne.
Would you like to pitch a story to FBO?
Or work with us as a correspondent?
Please email us at contact@focusblackoklahoma.com. The fate of the prairie chicken becomes a symbol of a bigger environmental argument in the heart of Oklahoma. President Biden stays firm on the bird's protection as the U.S. Senate and House battle to delist it, thereby ending federal intervention. While the national debate rages, local landowners are taking steps to address the needs of this now famous bird. Britny Cordera has the story.
The Senate voted to overturn the lesser prairie chicken's listing earlier this year. In July, the House did the same. President Joe Biden has already promised to veto a bill that would delist the lesser prairie chicken. Whether or not the bird is delisted or federally regulated, the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation says it won't change the fact there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make the state more habitable for prairie chicken. Kurt Kuklinski works for the department. He says Oklahoma's private landowners want to better conserve the prairie chicken without the intervention of federal regulations.
And through voluntary programs, they've shown that they're willing to contribute to the conservation of this species. What they don't want is a heavy-handed federal approach.
According to the Audubon Society, lesser prairie chicken populations have declined by 97% across their range since nationwide bird monitoring began in the 1960s. Rebecca Jim owns a 1.5-mile acreage just north of Veneta at the northern edge of the Cherokee Nation. She inherited this land from her family who used to ranch cattle here. We ride in her John Deere tractor from her gravel driveway to 2 fields she is turning into prairie.
When you think about prairie chickens, you got to create a place for them that they can thrive but still have some habitat.
She asked me if I could see this being a good home for prairie chickens.
So, what I want to ask you is, do you think they'll be happy here?
I think so. There's no trees here. There's
very little.
Yeah, very little trees. Yeah, it seems very spacious.
Might be enough room.
Yeah, I think so.
Jim says prairie chickens once called her family's land home. These would have been greater prairie chicken, whose southern range extends into northeastern Oklahoma. Every spring in the 70s and 80s, she could see them right outside her bedroom window, showing off their booming display to mate. She wants to bring prairie chickens back to her land, but the birds don't like man-made structures like roads, telephone poles, windmills, or pump jacks. They also don't like trees where predators can easily perch.
And they would come every year and dance right here, and probably other places, but they did perform here. There weren't so many trees then, so we could see them from inside the house and on the porches and not disturb them, but enjoy.
This is why Jim is remediating her land back to prairie. She wants to bring them back. The first step, getting rid of invasives like eastern red cedar.
So the very first thing I'm going to do is continue to get rid of any of the invasive large trees that are in here, and we'll take them down. There'll be good wood, firewood for people. There'll be good posts for anybody building fence. There'll be a good source, so I don't feel like they'll go to waste.
Then Jim will introduce fire to the land. She plans on using smaller branches from the invasive woody plants to fuel the fire. Afterwards, a few cattle will graze on each field to help fertilize the ground.
Following the burns, the cattle will eat any of the fresh invasive species that come up because they're tender, and they'll eat them, but they'll also mash in the seeds we want to be successful.
Seeds of plants like big and little bluestem, rattlesnake master, and other native species. Jim says it's going to take years to get the land back in good shape. Clay Nichols is the Lesser Prairie Chicken Coordinator for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He says there's been a significant decline in the amount of available habitat for prairie chickens over the last century, especially in the bird's southern range, including parts of northwestern Oklahoma.
150 years worth of habitat loss and fragmentation occurring over a long period of time, resulting in the landscape that the lesser prairie chicken lives in today and is trying to navigate, and thus we have declined viability for the species.
Healthy grasslands are important because they have the potential to capture carbon dioxide and purify the air and water, and they are important to maintain so farmers and ranchers can continue working the land. Nichols says these birds need a lot of connected prairie to survive. Because of that, prairie chickens become an indicator of the overall health of grasslands in the southern Great Plains.
The lesser prairie chicken is giving us clear indications that that system is struggling right now. And so I think that's the importance of this. It gives us an indicator that we have some work to do.
According to the Audubon Society, 84% of grasslands in the U.S. are privately owned, and 95% of all grassland birds live on cattle ranches. As Congress pushes against government attempts to protect prairie chickens, some landowners are taking it upon themselves to volunteer their fields for prairie restoration. Nichols says landowners want to participate in conservation of prairie chickens, despite Congress's recent actions.
The only reason we have the existing lesser prairie chickens that we currently have is because of the work that's being done on these private lands to conserve the species.
He says over 400,000 acres of privately owned land were enrolled in voluntary conservation programs that address the needs for prairie chickens, even before the bird was federally listed as endangered. For Focus Black Oklahoma, I'm Britny Cordera in Oklahoma City.
Thanks for joining us on Focus Black Oklahoma.
In 1921, the resilient citizens of Greenwood, an all-Black community in Tulsa, faced a devastating racial conflict that escalated into an unstoppable tragedy. In the present day, the people of Tulsa confront a new challenge: how to comprehend and impart this history to future generations. Tulsa's World Stage Theater is reprising the critically acclaimed production Reflections, written by two Tulsa playwrights. Anthony Cherry has more.
In 1921, the all-Black community of Greenwood in Tulsa faced a devastating racial tragedy in the form of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Today, all of Oklahoma must tackle a new challenge: how to accurately teach this difficult history to future generations. The World Stage Theater Company dives into this challenging period with another rich story of cultural significance. Reflections, written by Bailey James and Obum Ukabum. The play will run at the Tulsa Performing Arts Center's Lady Dunges Theater from October 20th to the 29th as the characters grapple with complex choices and even more complex historical forces. Many things have been written and published on the Tulsa Race Massacre. Justin Daniels, who has the roles of Reverend Abel and Uncle Alden, explains why he believes this production is unique.
I believe almost every cast member has a modern day character, and then they have a character from 1921. So it literally is reflections, right? It's the reflection of where we were as a society in 1921 and where we are. And I might be getting over my skis here, but I'm going to say it anyway. The very first scene, I'll just give you this and then we won't give you any more. But the very first scene is a dichotomy of a modern day school board meeting and a meeting happening in Greenwood, on the day that Dick Rowland is taken to the courthouse in a church. It's my church, Reverend Abel's church, and we are strategizing. And it ping-pongs back and forth. It's so unique. It's so dope. Never been a part of anything that is this intentional, and I can't say enough good things about it, but it's very unique.
Dara Allen plays Ashley Maddox and also plays Lizzie Temple Smith, a modern-day character and a historical character.
One of my characters, the modern-day character, is this white privileged mom who is she's trying to keep critical race theory out of the classroom because she's worried that it's going to traumatize her daughter or something. And then another character was like, well, my daughter is Black and she doesn't have the choice of learning about it or not. You know what I mean? There's no choice in her life. So it's so important that we teach everyone this because it's not fair that everyone doesn't know. And there's ways to teach it that's not going to traumatize. You know what I mean? They're never too young to know the truth.
Daniel speaks on what the team hopes to accomplish.
First of all, you do, whether you feel like you do or not. But we all have a role to play in just continuing to heal this city. This is a uniquely Tulsa story as well, which, again, shows don't come around like this, where you are in rehearsal with the writers. What I love about this particular show is that it doesn't leave us stuck in 1921, right? It's 2023, over 100 years ago. It's when the massacre occurred. So it leaves us with some hope. It also calls us up to be better. And anytime you can do that with art, not only to make people question and to make people think, but to challenge people to be better individually, I think is something I want to be a part of.
Allen and her child co-star in this production.
My kid she already gets it now. You know what I mean? She's 10 and she hears that and sees that. And, we practice it and rehearse it over and over. So she's getting this dialogue over and over in her head. And it's sinking in, and she sees it from a humanity point of view, not this is what you should do, or, this is the right thing, or, she's absorbing it in a real life personal way, and it's making an impact. And she's, becoming a little outspoken, awesome social justice kiddo, because she sees the real life of it instead of, learning it or not learning it in school.
Allen and Daniels hope that their efforts will challenge the mindsets of more than just children.
Even the characters that would normally be villainized in a show like this, they're presented in a very human way. The writers did a great job of humanizing those characters and their mentalities. And the fact is, we all know people like that, right? We know people like that. We love people like that. They're in our families. They go to our churches. They're in our social groups or what have they, our classmates. Although they might have opinions that we don't necessarily agree with, they're still human beings and they deserve humanity. And yet the show still does a great job of challenging, compassionately challenging those mindsets. I think we want them to walk away feeling challenged. We want them to walk away feeling uncomfortable. We want them to walk away feeling an intense desire to take inventory of their own lives and decisions and all of the hundreds of decisions we make every day, sometimes very unconsciously, and really take an inventory of those decisions.
Theater, as a fine art, has the power to leave lasting impressions on hearts and minds. It is through understanding and acknowledging the painful chapters of our past that we can move forward as a state, striving for justice, reconciliation, and unity. Reflections, as a work of art and as an experience, reminds us of the importance of confronting our history, embracing diversity, and working together to build a better future. Focus Black Oklahoma encourages you to engage in conversation, seek out more knowledge, and support initiatives that promote healing and equity. For Focus Black Oklahoma, I'm Anthony Cherry in Tulsa.
Have you thought you could be the next Chip and Joanna Gaines? Well, so did Sandra Slade, but listen to her story and decide for yourself if she was in a show from HGTV or from Animal Planet.
Have you ever had a project you started, then got distracted and started on another project, only to have to come back and realize you have to finish the first one you started? Talk about frustration. I mean, I'm a crafty person, but with life, sometimes I get too busy to get back on the thing I was doing. Sometimes I even have to buy more supplies, get additional information on how to complete it, or last resort, hire someone to complete it. It can be overwhelming and confusing, just like those long CVS coupon receipts. Well, if you're a homeowner and have ever done any kind of renovation, you know that it will take time. I decided I wanted to do something different with my closet. So at the time, my husband and I decided to demo part of the back wall, take down some boards and sheetrock and cabinetry. We figured we watch enough HGTV that we can DIY this, save some money. Well, it became a bigger task than we anticipated that was getting complicated with other life needs popping up. So we just kind of left it boarded up with some broken wood and put a tarp over the rest and stapled it there. One night, I was laying down on the bed and decided I was going to get up and hang up some of the clothes because they were all over the house. I love washing them, putting them in a dryer, but having to hang them up, I would rather pay somebody to do this. This particular night, I was so tired of having the clothes laying around in various piles, I just couldn't take it anymore. I figured I'm going to get it done, so I grabbed some hangers that were neatly tucked behind the folded clothes and started to hang up the clothes and lay them across the bed. My daughter's cat, Kimchi, was laying on my bed as usual in her diva mode, just looking at me. As I laid some of the clothes across the bed, Kimchi decided to get on some of the clothes, and I just shooed her off the bed. I gathered some of the clothes and went and opened the closet door. Standing with the closet door open and some of the hanged clothes, I looked in the closet. I was like, wait, how did Kimchi get in there so quickly? Now angered, I got ready to grab Kimchi and shoo her out of the closet. I was just about to reach in and move her. Just then I noticed Kimchi walking by me, looking at me with an expression said, "Oh, you got this?" Shocked, I looked back in the closet. As I stared, it was two beady eyes just staring back at me. Looking closer, I realized it wasn't Kimchi, but a possum. I stood with my mouth open and almost screamed, but I stifled my scream because I realized if I screamed, it would jump, or if I screamed, it'll wake my kids. Looking at Kimchi, She walked out and glanced back with a look, "This is above me now," and she left. I quickly closed my closet door and just stood there panicking. Like, what do I do? What do I do? Well, I mean, it's 10 o'clock at night. I can't do much of anything. I was not going to call an exterminator at this time of night because, that's after hours. Plus, I didn't want to freak the kids out either. But I knew one thing for sure, I can't let this thing get out. So I boarded up my closet door and I was like, I'll deal with this in the morning. Hopefully, it wasn't going to do anything to my clothes, but I could replace my clothes. What I couldn't replace was the trauma of seeing those beady eyes staring back at me. The bottom of my closet door doesn't touch the ground, so I put some poison down, some medicinal, and some diatomaceous earth. Because I was like, well, he ain't going to be too happy, but he also ain't going to be mobile by the time I have to open the closet door. The next morning, I take my daughter off to school and return to combat the situation because I'm like, he's still in there. By this time, I called an exterminator and waited for him to arrive in the 30 minutes he said. The exterminator, Mr. Anderson, came in. I told him it was in my closet and walked into my bedroom door. Mr. Anderson tells me that I'm about to open the closet door and tells me to get out of there. I'm standing in the doorway with Kimchi, both of us looking tired and wild-eyed at the same time. After he has it in the cage, Mr. Anderson says, whatever you gave it, it was either so happy or stoned it wasn't moving nowhere. As he gets it into the trap, Mr. Anderson tells me I need to fix it so nothing else gets in. Before Mr. Anderson leaves, I cautiously take all the clothes out because I'm hoping there are no other family members in the closet. And I notice the two boards that we decided were too high for us have a small gap and a plastic sheeting is coming down. Mr. Anderson says, yep, that's exactly how he got in. So I decided this is going to be taken care of now. I went to Home Depot, didn't measure anything. Grabbed various sizes of wood, nails, and wood glue, and boarded that area up in my closet by any means necessary. Kimchi watched from the side of the closet, just watched, only glancing at me to make sure I was grabbing supplies. I don't want any more surprises when I open my closet door except for the new clothes. Well, now I keep a picture of the possum in the cage hanging up to remind me never to procrastinate again.
Focus Black Oklahoma is produced in partnership with KOSU Radio, Tulsa Artist Fellowship, and Tri-City Collective. Additional support is provided by the George Kaiser Family Foundation and the Commemoration Fund. Our theme music is by Moffett Music. Focus Black Oklahoma's executive producers are Quresh Ali Lansana and Bracken Clark. Our associate producers are Smriti Iyengar and Jesse Ulrich. Our production interns are Joshua Wise and Shai Brown. You can visit us online at kosu.org or tricitycollective.com/focus-black-Oklahoma and on YouTube at Tri-City Collective. You can follow us on Instagram at FocusBlackOK and on Facebook at facebook.com/FocusBlackOK. You can hear Focus Black Oklahoma on demand for free at kosu.org, the NPR app, npr.org, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Focus Black Oklahoma honors the life, spirit, and work of Mr. Hughes Van Ellis, who was one of the 3 known survivors of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. Mr. Ellis made his transition on October 9th. He was 102 years old. And then there were 2. Ashe.
The KOSU Daily Podcast provides you with local news to get you on your way every Monday through Friday morning. The KOSU Daily includes stories from our state impact reporters looking into topics including healthcare and education. We'll also have reports on Indigenous affairs in the state of Oklahoma, along with rural and agricultural issues. You can find the KOSU Daily wherever you get your podcasts or at kosu.org. The KOSU Daily, Oklahoma news, every weekday.